China's President Xi Jinping held talks with Russia's leader Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Russia's deputy minister stressed the importance of the commitment made by both leaders at the 4th Annual Eastern Economic Forum. The United States Special Representative is meeting with officials from South Korea to discuss denuclearization. Steve Biegun is in Seoul, where North Korea is indirectly involved in talks. His meeting comes as President Donald Trump prepares for a second summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un at his request. A suicide bombing in Afghanistan has killed dozens of people. More on this story and others making headlines from around the world.
At least 32 people have been killed in a suicide bombing in the Nangarhar province of Afghanistan. The attack targeted a large crowd gathered to protest against a police commander. The region has been a stronghold of Islamic State militants and has suffered several deadly strikes this year. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack, although the Taliban issued a statement denying involvement.
There was a huge blast and it killed and wounded many people. I have taken one of my friends to this hospital for treatment, but I don't know about the exact number of people who were killed and wounded.
More than 100 people have reportedly died in a shipwreck off the Libyan coast last week, according to the human rights group Doctors Without Borders. The Libyan Coast Guard recovered 276 survivors and brought them to the port city of Homs. Only 2 bodies were reportedly recovered. The majority of victims are from African nations like Sudan, Mali, and Egypt. Police have used tear gas and stun grenades against students protesting education fee increases in Ivory Coast. The incident occurred outside the Houphouët-Boigny University in the country's economic capital, Abidjan. Zimbabwe has declared a cholera emergency in Harare after 20 people died from disease in the capital. The health minister says at least 2,000 people were infected by drinking contaminated water.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. A team of journalists in 25 locations around the world. 3 broadcasts to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR. The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on teleSUR.
Me gustaría tener un mundo mucho más inclusivo para todos.
没有贫穷。
Στην ανθρωπότητα θα ήθελα να δω παραπάνω αγάπη, αγνότητα, πολιτισμό και επαφή με τη φύση.
Que el ser humano despierte su conciencia.
I want humanity to see itself as one humanity.
We are the people, a space, a voice. We are teleSUR without borders.
So yeah, national security is one of the most powerful notions in modern times to swindle, I think, people, to do things that are not in their best interest, and to support massive military complexes that are not in anybody's interest, but that are like cancers feeding on society.
Watch a series where the U.S. geopolitical strategies as an empire representing the culture of war and propaganda are shown, and how this has served as a tool of social control. Psy-War. Saturday. Only on teleSUR.
Me gustaría tener un mundo mucho más inclusivo para todos.
没有贫穷。
Στην ανθρωπότητα θα ήθελα να δω παραπάνω αγάπη, αγνότητα, πολιτισμό και επαφή με τη φύση.
Que el ser humano despierte su conciencia.
I want humanity to see itself as one humanity.
We are the people, a space, a voice. We are teleSUR without borders.
Queremos verdad, reparación integral, pero sobre todo justicia, pero justicia social.
How many ways there are to tell a story? The different perspectives of our nations are on teleSUR documentaries. Sundays, only on teleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, teleSUR, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Nos cerraba todo esto, nos tiraban los perros.
Todos tienen la palabra. Ya son más de 14 años que estoy acá, ¿no? Es en el único lugar en todo el Perú que se da.
Nos sentimos libres para poder opinar.
Y he aprendido cosas que nunca había visto en los libros.
At Plaza San Martín, in the center of Lima, the oldest form of political communication is kept alive, surviving the arrival of newspapers, radio, cinema, television, and the internet.
Que las luchas y el pensamiento de los pueblos vienen de muchos años acá en la Plaza San Martín.
Nuestro mensaje no es comprendido, entonces a veces hasta el mismo pueblo como que rechaza a los artistas, creen que son...
Por la plaza de la antigua Universidad de San Marcos habían los intelectuales en 1920 más o menos, 1930, los grandes intelectuales, los grandes catedráticos que salían a debatir en, ¿cómo se llama?, en unión de círculos. Nosotros nos hemos venido para acá para poder seguir moviendo este aspecto intelectual.
Como reserva moral del país.
La primera vez que vine fue cuando estaban reprimiendo aquí en la Plaza de San Martín. Le arrojaron los perros, vinieron patrulleros, le tiraron agua. Yo me pregunté por qué, ¿no? ¿Por qué a una manifestación popular se le reprimía así?
La causa, por qué la gente o por qué yo en particular vengo aquí, es para poder enterarme y enriquecerme de ciertos temas, generalmente son políticos, filosóficos o de la sociedad peruana, la realidad nacional en la que estamos viviendo.
People come to debate in this plaza because they feel that corporate mass media fail to fulfill their democratic role to provide a diversity of information and fail also to serve as outlets to voice citizens' concerns.
Lo que salía en los medios de comunicación era una cosa muy distinta de la realidad, ¿no? Y el único lugar en donde escuché a las personas plantear el problema realmente como es fue aquí en el Ágora Popular, ¿no? Es una alternativa de versiones de comunicación frente a la pobreza de comunicación que imparten la televisión peruana, ¿no?
La manifestación de lo que nos sentimos los peruanos, del día a día, cómo lo vemos y qué cosa nos afecta y qué cosa nos gusta.
Te permite hablar de manera libre. Es el único lugar donde tú puedes encontrar y puedes expresarte de manera libre.
Acá me gusta porque acá puedo expresar libremente mi pensamiento, mis ideas y mi arte. Entonces, acá con el pueblo ellos me dan, por ejemplo, el conocimiento y yo también les doy el conocimiento.
Si bien es cierto, nosotros tenemos un parlamento que se supone que nos representa al pueblo, pero no es verdad, porque ellos solo representan a un grupo nada más, pero el verdadero representante del pueblo, aquel que tiene conciencia de lo que está sucediendo en el país, usted lo puede encontrar diariamente aquí en el Ágora Popular.
Participants also feel that even though they come with different opinions, the space is open for everyone.
No todos estamos de acuerdo, hay diversas manifestaciones, pero es un espacio abierto para toda persona en la cual pueda manifestarse.
Es una confluencia donde todos tienen la palabra.
Invitamos a toda la gente a venir acá. Muchísimas gracias.
The world is divided into 4 spheres, each sphere divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Michael Fox. On May 23rd, El Salvador's Bishop of the Poor, the late Catholic priest Oscar Romero, will be beatified in San Salvador. Roughly 250,000 people are expected to attend the ceremony, which could open the door to Romero's potential sainthood. I'll speak with San Francisco State professor Felix Curi about the life of Oscar Romero and the importance of his beatification. But first, a look at media in Latin America. The Washington-based NGO Freedom House has released its yearly evaluation of press freedoms throughout the world. However, the report uses a highly suspect method to conduct its evaluation before deeming a country either free, partly free, or not free. Interestingly, but perhaps not surprisingly, regions typically understood as advanced and capitalist, such as the United States, Western Europe, and Australia, are categorized as free. This determination is made despite the fact that there is a noticeable lack of diversity of media outlets in these countries, with ownership highly concentrated in the hands of the few. Moving on to the so-called not free category, Freedom House points out 2 notable examples from Latin America, Ecuador and Venezuela. In contrast to Western developed nations, both Ecuador and Venezuela display a high degree of media plurality, including a strong presence of community and alternative outlets. In the case of Ecuador, Freedom House takes issue with the country's communication law, which aims to democratize media outlets typically dominated by wealthy elites. The law obliges media outlets to uphold journalistic standards and prohibits the dissemination of manipulated information. In the case that violations occur, citizens now have a legal means to hold media outlets accountable. Venezuela's media laws work much the same way. The control that private business interests have held over the media in Latin America have given them a powerful tool in maintaining the status quo. We only need to look at the 2002 media coup in Venezuela for an example of how media can be used to derail democracy. If we were to accept Freedom House's categorizations, then we must accept the fact that media is free only when it is at the service of wealthy elites. This is now not the case in many countries in Latin America, and it's time for Freedom House and other NGOs to respect the will of the poor, working class, and indigenous majorities who were once systematically excluded from their nation's media landscape. On May 23rd, El Salvador's Bishop of the Poor, Monsignor Oscar Romero, will be beatified in San Salvador. Romero was a celebrated defender of social justice and the poor in the late 1970s while serving as Archbishop of San Salvador. He was a strong critic of the country's death squads at a time of intense government repression and was assassinated in March 1980 while delivering Mass. Felix Curi is an ethnic studies professor at San Francisco State University. In the 1960s, while in his early teens, Curi worked with Romero as an altar boy in his hometown of San Miguel in eastern El Salvador. Felix Curi, welcome to Imaginary Lines.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about the life of Monsignor Romero.
Felix, you knew Oscar Romero personally. What was it like working with him as an altar boy? And what kind of a man was he?
He was stoic, serious. Sometimes we were afraid I would go to confession at times. And, you know, I was wondering why I had to pray as much for a few things that I did. And, you know, so I remember how we respected him, and yeah, serious man, you know, yes, and in those days he used to spend a lot of time with people who were wealthy. You know, he was conservative, but somebody who was always talking about the gospel, you know, and talk to us about what is the way and what we ought to do. Those were the things that I remember. And I never expected him to go through this kind of conversion. And that's really like an important thing for me and my life and the people that I know, because his conversion was about dialogue, the possibility of human beings who have a particular view of the world could see the world from multiple points of view. And so that's an amazing act of love, to be open to others.
Were there any indications before this transformation that Romero would become such an important voice for peace and justice?
You know, over the years, I have read some of the things that I didn't pay that much attention then, but he was concerned back in my hometown about how people of faith behave, and was critical of the governor or the mayor of the town who kept being re-elected, you know, from the same family. And so there were some signs that I couldn't see because I didn't have the level of consciousness that I learned later on in life, that we all have that awakening moment, right?
And what was the mainstream media's portrayal of Oscar Romero in the last years of his life when he was most vocal in support of the poor?
You know, the media in those days, la prensa gráfica, el diario de hoy, were the most hateful of all, inventing lies, rumors that he was close to the guerrillas, and that he was a communist, or he had some sort of mental illness. It was really awful, and there were articles and paid ads that appeared in all the newspapers blaming him of things that he had never done or supported, because he was also critical of the left, but a lot more critical of the right. So the news media, even at these days, when I read El Diario de Hoy, none of the major media at this point has ever said, we apologize for what we did, because there was a web of complicity between the right wing, the elite, the military, and the media. It was an attack every single day, you know. They were responsible for instigating and planning his death.
So what's the representation of Oscar Romero in the media today? And how's that changed from the demonization of the past?
The representation of the media these days is the representation of a saint that belongs in the church, but is not the saint, is not the representation of Jesus, the Jesus that came to El Salvador through him, who will go and be with the poor, you know. So now you have the hierarchy of this big institution, and institutions sometimes they have openings, right? And so, but it's being celebrated, and I just hope that this becomes an opportunity for young people to learn about the courage that he had, the courage that even after his death, the courage to go on and struggle for social justice and peace. And so I think there are so many saints in the church. I just hope that his image and the history of Monsignor Romero is not sanitized. I think that it's being sanitized. That's my sense.
So you believe that the image of Oscar Romero is being sanitized, as you say, or stripped of its political content. How so?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Monsignor Romero will denounce the structural sins, the level of inequality, the disparities. And I think that in many ways, that's what that elite that continues to be in power and hold the power. Because, you know, we got to the 1980s, most of us didn't want to fight. Most of us wanted peace. And we had a long history of democratic participation, but there was never an opportunity to do that, and he will walk among the people. He would say that what happened in El Salvador was a form of Holocaust, and the U.S. Embassy knew absolutely everything that what happened in El Salvador. So it was really clear, and he will denounce the role of the United States as demand to stop sending weapons. And he would be doing the same if he was in Venezuela these days, or if he was in Yemen, looking at the murderous policies that are going on in front of us. And I think that that's who he was.
Thank you, Felix, for joining me on Imaginary Lines.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have a good one.
On Sunday, the world celebrated International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia, an effort to urge straight-identified people to support the struggle for LGBT rights and equality. The day gets a considerable amount of attention from both the media and the public. However, like many of these days aimed at increasing awareness, these efforts tend to provide only a superficial critique of the problems facing LGBT people. Many social realities that compound the oppression of LGBT folks are usually ignored. Can it be said that a poor gay person from a rural area living in a country where homosexuality is criminalized is facing the same oppression as a middle-class gay person living in an urban area in a country where gay marriage is legal? While these groups of course have a shared struggle, glossing over differences does a disservice to those seeking liberation. The trouble is that many campaigns cater only to the more privileged group. This perhaps is in order to ensure they don't jeopardize their funding sources. One example is the Human Rights Campaign, the group behind the viral =sign campaign on Facebook a couple of years ago. The NGO has been the subject of criticism for its pandering to wealthy corporations and individuals at the expense of LGBT issues. This is particularly the case in its failure to take up the struggle of trans people. The fight for LGBT rights and equality requires allies, but these allies need to know who and what they're supporting. They also need to know that it's going to take more than a profile picture to achieve change. That's it for today's program. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Michael Fox. Please join me next week.
Of the world, the one and only, from teleSUR studios in Quito, Ecuador. It's our privilege and our pleasure to introduce you to Andrew Self.
Space. I've never been there, but I've seen a few movies about it. In all these movies, the aliens seem to come down, take over Earth, kill everyone, when that's more likely to be the human reaction. Carry a big gun and say, we're here to help you. We're just going to take over your land. When has ever, we come in peace, been for good? Welcome to the Self Show. Space Boogie, Space Boogie. I was down at the United Nations office the other day and I found out that they have a United Nations for Outer Space Affairs. Yes, that's right. So I guess this is probably the closest thing to that take me to your leader point. Now, but the guy Stephen Hawking, you know, the famous guy, wheelchair, yeah, Simpsons, yep, that guy. He said that if there did exist aliens, we wouldn't want to come in contact with them at all. Now, why would this be? According to Hawking, it is that It'd just be like when Columbus landed in the Americas. It'd be an absolute disaster and they'd take over everything. He also pointed out that if we just look at ourselves to see how intelligent life develops, we wouldn't want to be part of that. Now that's a Stephen Hawking burn. Tonight on the show, I've made the venture into deep, deep space to meet an alien who wants to speak to me. Welcome to the show, Mr. Alien, who kind of looks like a Christmas elf crossed with a rapist.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello, hello. Now,
Hello.
what do you want to speak to me about? What do you want of me?
We actually want to know about humankind.
Okay, but why me? Why speak to me?
It's all about that deep knowledge that you have on human behavior, actually.
This is true. I spurt my deep knowledge every week, Fridays, on the Self Show.
So anyway, Andrew, tell us about this funny story of how people came into existence.
Well, it's very simple, really. There was a man, a woman, Adam and Eve, and God made them, right? So they're in a garden, and then Eve, being a woman, she ate the apple, and they had sex, and away you go, screwed everything up.
Whew, interesting. But who's God?
God, he's the all-powerful, all-seeing being.
Like a prehistoric Superman.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, but he's of any importance to you because...
Well, he's not really important for anyone on Earth. We just want to look pretty, I guess.
But you're all ugly and fat and, you know.
True. That's what happens when you try and look pretty all the time.
Forget about it. So let's say that we actually want to conquer your planet and we need your help.
No, I can't. I can't help you on that one. No, I'm out.
You will help us. Otherwise, we will make you even more white than you already are.
Is that possible? Righto. I will. I'll help.
We want you to go and tell people. This is what they want. You give it to them. Otherwise, they will kill you.
But no one listens to me. I tell them every week the world's going to end, but there's still...
And?
Nothing really happens. Like, we need to... I've got an idea. We need to do something, right? Right. You've got lots of weapons. This is what you are. You're an alien. Aliens have weapons, right? So what you do is you sell some weapons to one country, you sell a bit more weapons to another country, they fight against each other, then you sell some more weapons back to the other country, and everyone fights in amongst each other. People on Earth love doing that. And then you sell all the weapons you have, and you're rich. You buy up Earth. Done.
Fucking genius, Andrew. Fucking genius. No wonder why people listen to you every Friday night at 11:30 at teleSUR English.
Oh, don't they? But I just have one question. What do you want from us?
See, we had thought of like keeping you as pets.
Pets? That doesn't make much sense. Why would you do that?
The thing is that we found you very funny.
But you keep us as pets, but why don't you keep the animals as pets? Like, they're kind of stupider than us and everything. Keep them.
Not so funny.
You find us funny? Why?
You're fucking hilarious, Andrew. I mean, you choose these rascals as leaders, then you go complaining they're rascals.
That is true, yeah.
Exactly, okay? And then you have all these religions that you're so freaking faithful to them, okay, right? That's right, right? But then you have all these new scientific discoveries you can love and you cannot live without.
Yeah, there's a bit
Wait. Then you have all this dotted line, right? You know, like borders and frontiers. Well, you fight over them, we don't see them from outer space.
Yeah, you've got a good point. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you now. What do I have to do?
You just wait and we will give you our instructions.
Okay, sounds good. Hang on, just one last request. Can you not abduct me when I'm having a dump?
We will think about it.
Aliens, as we know, are some sort of things from outer space who come to conquer us and take all they want. Essentially, they kind of just look like vaginas most of the time on television. They come down to anally rape us and steal our cows, but still, they never achieve their goal of complete domination. But there has been some pretty cool aliens on TV. Let's take a look at the top 5. Number 5, Elf. Well, the lack of Elf on our televisions at the moment hurts more than a cat in a Melmac blender. Number 4, Dr. Zoidberg. He's kind of like my great uncle Sam from Ukraine, this vaguely, no, not vaguely Semitic, purely Semitic character who will, I'm not even quite sure what this guy's on about. Number 3, the aliens from The Simpsons. These guys, well, from Regal 4, they're the only people I'd want to be kidnapped and anally raped by. Number 2, Spock. Spock, he's just like that sort of dependable, wonderful friend you always have. When you have problems with your green girlfriend or some intergalactic spaceman is going to beat you up, Spock will be there. However, I wouldn't want him to be my wingman because with his Vulcan charms, panties would drop before he even got to go near the girls. And number 1, Doctor Who. Now, he is the greatest alien ever made on television. 1, doesn't even look like an alien. 2, he's been played by about 2,700 different people. Always a man. Can we ever get a woman playing Doctor Who? But doesn't matter. Doctor, we love you. In the first and second volumes of The Critique of Pure Reason, by the great German philosopher Immanuel Kant, he asks, what are space and time? Are they real existences? Are they something that are part of us or they're just made up? I don't know. Do I look like a bloody scientist or philosopher to you?
I went to sleep, Miles, and it happened.
Oh, Becky.
They were right.
I should never have left you.
Stop acting like a fool, Miles, and accept us.
No. Never.
He's in here! He's in here! Get him! Get him!
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky. A moment's sleep and the girl I loved was an inhuman enemy bent on my destruction. That moment's sleep was death to Becky's soul, just as it had been for Jack and Teddy and Dan Kaufman and all the rest. Their bodies were now hosts, harboring an alien form of life.
From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Carla Gonzalez and this is From the South. begin in Brazil, where the Workers' Party has handed over the presidential candidacy to Fernando Haddad. He will replace former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva in the electoral race. The decision was made at the party's meeting in Curitiba. Hundreds of people supporting Lula have gathered outside the prison where he's been held.
That pain, that defeat and disappointment caused by losing our candidate motivates us to accept President Lula's challenge to not leave Brazil without an alternative, to continue fighting. And as he determined and suggested, we introduce Fernando Haddad as the presidential candidate of the Workers' Party.
Sin una alternativa para la lucha.
We will not accept a Brazil of the 19th or 18th century. We don't want an unequal Brazil. We will work together to build a new country. We are together here to fulfill this task, and we don't have any problems. We have the will to give back to Brazil. We count with each and every one of you. We will go to the streets, and on the 28th, we will celebrate Brazil's democracy. Long live democracy, Lula libre, and long live Brazil.
Haddad is the voice of Lula. We won't need to tell the people this. Lula is still the candidate, but under the name of Fernando Haddad. It's the same program, it's the same project.
Our correspondent André Vieira has more from Curitiba.
September 11 is a historic day for Brazil, because it is a day to reaffirm once again that Lula da Silva is suffering through a process of political, media, and judicial persecution, so they can remove him from the electoral race here in Brazil. But it's also the day in which Lula da Silva will be replaced by Fernando Haddad in the elections to take place on October 7th. Social movements are intensifying their struggle to reaffirm Lula's innocence, but also in support of Fernando Haddad, that they say will be the legitimate representative of Lula da Silva in these coming elections. They are also calling for return to democracy after the coup in 2016.
That was André Vieira from Brazil. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has condemned the siege against Venezuela at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. He said the measures taken by the United States and the European Union have promoted a financial blockade. Arreaza also met with the new UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, to discuss Venezuelan migration throughout the region. He also asked the Human Rights Council to be fair in its rulings.
We now have proof. How many times has President Nicolás Maduro and previously President Hugo Chavez, how many times did they denounce the interventionist, brutal, criminal action of the imperial factors against Venezuela?
And late Tuesday, President Nicolás Maduro spoke at the closing of the Third Youth Congress of the United Socialist Party. He said that the demand for compensation for the more than 5 million Colombian citizens residing in Venezuela would be taken to international bodies by Minister Jorge Rodríguez.
I have authorized the legal teams of the Republic to prepare a lawsuit against the Colombian government to demand compensation for the 5.6 million Colombians we have living in Venezuela, to pay us an indemnity in US dollars. We will take this to the international bodies, and I have to put the Minister Jorge Rodríguez in charge of that.
President Maduro also recalled Salvador Allende on the anniversary of the Chilean coup.
We are commemorating 45 years since the fascist coup staged by U.S. imperialists against the constitutional elected president of Chile, the great leader Salvador Allende. 45 years since the coup that subjected Chile to a fierce dictatorship with more than 5,000 disappeared, many tortured, 100,000 people in concentration camps, and over 1 million forced into exile.
September 11th marks the 45th anniversary of the coup in Chile in 1973 that left President Salvador Allende dead and ushered in the 17-year dictatorship of General Augusto Pinochet. Nearly 3,200 people died or disappeared in political violence during the dictatorship until 1990. The vast majority of deaths were by Pinochet's forces and by his infamous secret police in clandestine detention centers. Another 28,000 were tortured.
Every September 11, Chile awakens more silent than usual, with the feeling that no matter how much time has passed, things are still not right.
Today is the anniversary of the military coup which put an end to democracy. I'm too young to give an informed opinion if the actions of that day were justified, but I believe that bombing the presidential palace is not the way to defend our nation.
There were so many detained, so many disappeared and tortured. Their family members joined the crowd of mourners.
I don't have a name for it. It was painful. I would be waiting to buy bread, and members of the military would attack us. There are so many more things not worth remembering.
What does today signify for you?
Pain. My dad was taken to the National Stadium, where so many people were killed.
Was your dad one of the many disappeared?
Yes, I still don't know where he is.
This is why memory matters, reconstructing the events of that day over and over again. Projects like Timeless Pictures represent this idea by merging historical pictures with current image. Many initiatives are defying indifference and impunity traits, words that are becoming more frequent following the recent freeing of members of the Pinochet administration accused of murder and torture. Mireia and her brother's story are part of one of the most heartbreaking projects, a documentary that reconstructs his final moments as a prisoner in Dawson Island.
Our conviction remains strong despite the passage of time. Time will not lead to forgetting. It will only lead to the strengthening of our will for truth and justice for the victims.
Another art project being held this year is the digital recreation of the faces of those who were lost so their families may see how they could have aged. This is what they would look like today, they say, in between laughter and tears.
We are calling out impunity. There are those who walk away free of our suffering, free of losing loved ones. That can no longer be. My brother will never come back.
Projects like this not only reveal the link families have with their lost loved ones, but the link a nation has with its past.
Social and political organizations have marked the anniversary of the military coup in Chile. They honored former President Allende, who died in that presidential palace on September 11. They are also demanding justice for the victims and the disappeared of Pinochet's brutal regime. Dozens of demonstrators have also commemorated the anniversary in England, outside the Chilean embassy in London. Many participants were political prisoners under the dictatorship. They protested with messages embroidered into patchworks, which they prepared themselves. They also displayed the list of people who disappeared during the dark days of the dictatorship.
I'm a former political prisoner of Pinochet's dictatorship. We are here with various Chileans that also arrived during my times who now have kids. And we are demanding the Chilean government to deliver justice for the victims who were assassinated and many just disappeared. I want to send a message to President Sebastián Piñera. I want to ask him to respect the international legislation. Why am I saying this? Well, because since Piñera became president, his government has freed various assassins that have committed grave crimes against humanity. We cannot allow that.
The reason we're here today outside the Chilean embassy, 45 years after the coup, is because even though we have democracy today in Chile, we've not had justice. We still have 3,000 people disappeared whose loved ones do not know where they are, how they were killed, have no gravestone to go and visit, to put flowers down. And for us it's very important that their memories aren't forgotten, that they're not lost.
Coming up, more stories. We'll be back.
Western world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Residents of the Chilean communities of Puchuncavi and Quintero are protesting against the environmental crisis in the area. The Health Commission has been meeting to find a solution. Our correspondent in Santiago, Tiare Valenzuela, has the details.
The Health Commission has met to discuss the massive poisoning that occurred in the coastal area in the communities of Puchuncavi and Quintero. A few weeks ago, at least 30 students were poisoned and taken to the hospital with nausea and paralysis. A few days ago, the number of victims rose to 300. The two affected communities have shown the highest levels of cancer in the country and also several cases of miscarriages. An industrial plant has been located in the area since the 1970s. Residents in the affected area have protested and asked the government to guarantee for the safety of their life.
That was Tiare Valenzuela. Now, trade unions and social movements in Argentina have set up soup kitchens throughout the country. Better known as holladas, they are a gesture of protest against the cuts and job losses imposed by the government of Mauricio Macri. Sabrina Roth reports from Buenos Aires.
A number of soup kitchens were organized today by the Workers' Confederation of Argentina, the National Federation of Labor Cooperatives, and the Milagros Salas Front for Labor and Dignity. Since the 9th of July, numerous soup kitchens have been set up to protest against the restructuring that has affected 100,000 jobs. These are jobs that existed under the previous government and were cut without any compensation. That affects many sectors, and it is made more serious as a result of the austerity measures imposed by Mauricio Macri and the IMF. That is why more than 15,000 people have come out to protest across the country today.
Sabrina Roth from Argentina. Workers in Costa Rica are continuing their week of protests. Thousands of workers from the public services have marched in the capital, San Jose, to support the open-ended strike that began on Monday. They are angry about the government's fiscal reform plan. Workers say it will affect the most vulnerable. They also believe the new measures won't help the country's economy.
They shouldn't raise the basic needs products by 1%, because there are people in this country in extreme poverty, and the only thing it will do is to make the citizen who does not have to eat suffer more.
This is a movement that continues. It is a movement of an indefinite nature, and tomorrow we will be in the streets again.
A state of emergency has been declared in 2 of Honduras' southern provinces due to a drought. Families are going hungry because of the severe conditions and its effects on their farms. Those living in hard-hit areas have not been able to feed themselves, so families require emergency food. Roughly 82% of corn and bean crops have been lost. More than half of the municipalities have been badly affected. It's been almost a year since the earthquake that shattered Mexico City. Our correspondent Pablo Perez tells us how they are dealing with the effects.
When the earthquake alarm goes off, the response is immediate.
The students at this college instantly abandon their classrooms and follow instructions to evacuate. Experts from a research institute say such training saved lives during the September 19th earthquake.
That very same day, there was a drill hours earlier, which meant people were very aware of what they should do if there was an earthquake.
At this forum, 19S, Mexico, 365 days after the earthquake, experts from different fields talk about the effects of the quake. For this psychologist, the constant drills do save lives, but they ignore the emotional harm that may be caused.
We begin to think of it as something natural. Oh yeah, the alarm went off. And we evacuate the area with our phone in our hands, but we no longer consider it serious. It becomes an ordinary, everyday part of life. And it should not be like that.
Another big impact is the visible damage caused by the earthquakes across the city. Damage it will take a lot of time to repair, and often only by the efforts of the victims themselves.
From what I've seen, it'll take around 10 years. While the neighbors come to an agreement, then the expert opinion is sought and the project is developed. It's very hard.
38 buildings in the city collapsed, but many of those still standing remain a possible danger.
We've listed some of the buildings as uninhabitable, but there are still people living in them because they say they don't have anywhere to go. It's a very difficult problem.
According to official figures, 1 year after the earthquake, there are still 349 buildings left to demolish, of the 411 that were damaged beyond repair. 983 buildings, like this one, are classified as high risk after the September quakes. The victims, like these residents of the Tlalpan housing estate, say it seems they are still not a priority for the government.
More than 1 million people have been evacuated from the east coast of the United States as Hurricane Florence approaches. The Category 4 storm is said to be the most powerful to menace the region in nearly 30 years. Authorities have warned of torrential rains and flooding across several states. And many gas stations ran out of supplies, forcing some residents to stay put. The storm is being predicted to reach Category 4, but despite this, some locals are insisting on waiting in their homes. Grocery stores are running low on water and food. Florence could make landfall in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina on Thursday morning. Dominica, Martinique, and Guadeloupe are all under a hurricane watch. Isaac is a tropical storm, but calling it a watch means hurricane conditions could be felt in under 48 hours. Just under a year ago, Dominica was severely damaged after the passage of Hurricane Maria. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit called on citizens to take all advisories seriously and to keep monitoring the developments with this storm.
We all have vividly in our memories what happened to us in respect to Hurricane Maria and the speed at which it moved from a Category 3 to a Category 5, which was the quickest in history, 36 minutes. And we all suffered at the hands of Hurricane Maria. So as far as the National Emergency Planning Organization is concerned, we are taking no chances. And we're leaving no stone unturned in respect to the preparation of the state, the country, and its citizens.
We'll take one last short break, but stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth, to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on teleSUR.
Thank you for joining us again. Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is in China, where she's meeting with top officials to boost new collaborative projects between the two countries. She says she's optimistic about the benefits of the cooperation.
This meeting was aimed at expanding cooperation, reinforcing projects, and planning new ones, according to the instructions President Maduro gave us. So this is a way for the Venezuelan people to reach welfare. Cooperation with China will benefit both peoples.
Russia and China have pledged to strengthen bilateral ties and promote world peace. China's President Xi Jinping held talks with Russia's leader Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Russia's deputy minister stressed the importance of the commitment made by both leaders at the 4th Annual Eastern Economic Forum.
Both China and Russia need Vladivostok to function as a platform to communicate, make decisions and sign agreements, and the exchanges between the leaders of the two nations during the forum are especially meaningful. So I think the forum is very important as for both the economic and political aspects.
Now to Egypt, where an Arab League meeting in Cairo has discussed the U.S. decision to cut funding to the United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheit said the goal of the U.S. was to question the legitimacy of the agency. However, he said that the decision will not alter the energy and determination with which UNRWA serves Palestinian refugees. On August 31st, the U.S. State Department announced it will be withdrawing all fundings.
The state of Palestine will find itself compelled to make difficult decisions in the face of this international negligence in seriously dealing with the affairs of the Palestinian people. We hope that these latest crazy steps by the U.S. administration will provoke the conscience of the world to act before it is too late.
The Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nevencia, has called to have undeniable proof of provocations being prepared to discredit the Syrian government. He was speaking at the Security Council.
We ask to be heard one more time. The use of chemical weapons by Damascus has not military grounds and is harmful for the military and political point of view, and it would be an invitation to the Western trio to attack Syria, which it is threatening to the under pretext of the use of chemical weapons. However, provocations by the opponents of Damascus who count onto the military support for foreign patrons are quite possible. We have undeniable proof that such provocations are being prepared.
Catalonia's pro-independence movement has rallied in Barcelona. Around 1 million people have demonstrated for the region's National Day. They also called for the release of imprisoned Catalan leaders who they called political prisoners.
For many years, we have been asking to express ourselves democratically to decide our future. We are in an EU country that does not let us to vote to decide our future. We are here because our politicians and our government, following our instruction, set up ballot boxes and the Spain state removed them by force. And for doing this, those people are in prison.
And our final story, an upcoming documentary that sheds light on the story of Scottish workers who boycotted the coup in Chile. The documentary Nae Pasarán, meaning They Shall Not Pass, tells the story of how Bob Fulton and his colleagues refused to repair the Chilean Air Force jet engines arriving at their factory in Scotland in 1974, the same ones that were used to bomb La Moneda Palace. Despite risking their jobs, they led an act of international solidarity against the dictatorship of Pinochet.
They're pensioners. Bob's 95, Robert is 80. They're now commanders of the Republic of Chile. They've received the highest honor given to foreigners by the government of Chile for their efforts to preserve human rights. And one of the things I'm really proud of, we were able to find a lot of the basically Chilean Air Force officers would refuse to take part in the coup to tell their story.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But this and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. Here you can find all the updated information plus videos on all the stories that we presented today. Be also sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, teleSUR, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on teleSUR.
Me gustaría tener un mundo mucho más inclusivo para todos.
没有贫穷.
Στην ανθρωπότητα θα ήθελα να δω παραπάνω αγάπη, αγνότητα, πολιτισμό και επαφή με τη φύση.
Que el ser humano despierte su conciencia.
I want humanity to see itself as one humanity.
We are the people, a space, a voice. We are teleSUR without borders.
So yeah, national security is one of the most powerful notions in modern times to swindle, I think, people, to do things that are not in their best interest, and to support massive military complexes that are not in anybody's interest, but that are like cancers feeding on society, effectively.
Watch a series where the U.S. geopolitical strategies as an empire representing the culture of war and propaganda are shown, and how this has served as a tool of social control. Psy-War. Saturday. Only on teleSUR.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. A team of journalists in 25 locations around the world. 3 broadcasts to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR.
Greetings, friends. Crew member of our beloved, polluted, and unique spacecraft, which, since the last time we met, has taken another turn about its imaginary axis, and of course, continues creating events in full development. And we have all type of events taking place in our beloved and polluted, but we have a topic related to the Middle East that is, as always, represented by the Israeli expansion on the Palestine area, and they don't give up. And Israel was created as a resolution of the United Nations. And when the Palestinians look for something alike, they should have some respect. However, people don't want to do so. So we are back to the events that are taking place in the Middle East, and about this, let us not forget that the Gaza Strip is still the biggest open ghetto on earth, violating every resolution of the United Nations. But there's people, whenever they have the support and the veto from Washington, they're playing together in the international stage, and they know that there's always calculated risk, and they tend to get away with it. So let's take a look at the events in full development. So today, we have a part of this reality that happens daily. Protesters building houses for the Bedouin people that Israel is trying to wipe away from the map. A Palestinian activist, Mohammed al-Habib, in a house in Wadi al-Ahmar. These are basically boxes, containers that have been turned into homes in the valley. An Israeli settlement in the part above. Always they have the privileged zone for defense. It is a clear message. So we send this to Palestine wherever they are. It's our right to be in our land. From here we say that this land where we have built these structures is near the Bedouin community of Kal al-Ahmar that is being threatened of being demolished by Palestinian authorities. And if the Israeli authorities want to overthrow Khan al-Ahmar, thousands of Palestinians will come and will build the structures to live within. So this was the proposal. So, in accordance with Israel, in the part above of the column, they're putting together these boxes. They are just containers taken from airports, Bedouins from the Khan al-Ahmar community, trying to isolate this in order to have a space inside which has an adequate temperature. We can also see these smaller houses, these slums. We live in danger. It doesn't matter if we have neighbors or not. It will be better to have neighbors in order to keep our Palestinian land and hold on to it. And here we have images of something similar to a rosary. And Ibrahim Abdul stated, they say that they want to improve the situation of residents in this community, but when we saw the place that they want to bring us in the east of Al-Istariyya, this is close to a dump, and it's of course impossible to live there. So the Palestinian Authority, represented in this case by a Barakat, states the Palestinian state presented a statement as administration of the peripheral community focused on the war crimes that Khan al-Ahmar is facing, specifically the crimes of forceful displacement, ethnic cleansing, and destruction of civil property, which Palestinians face every day. El-Istariyya, this is the west margin. Israeli authorities with the caravans there, bringing the pre-manufactured houses, and they build them as well as taking the land. And they work around these houses that are, of course, very different to the other ones. They have everything needed. They have AC. And there's also some other spaces left in the background. And these are trucks that are close to the caravans, which is a very free translation that I agree with. Palestinian authorities state that the United States have attacked the international law by cutting the funds of the United Nations. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ali Al-Malik, stated, the UNRWA represents a legal, ethical mandate for the Palestinian people and their cause. The cancellation of the operations of the UN for this means the elimination of history as well as the rights of Palestine, and we fully reject this from happening. They should reject everything that the states and Israel are doing in order to distort the basis of international law as well as the rights of people that are unalienable. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jordan, Ayman Safadi, stated, looking for more support, the Kingdom, Jordan, together with Egypt and Palestine, and together with the European Union, will hold a meeting on the General Assembly of the United Nations in this month. This meeting will have the objective of reassuring the WPS political perspective and also look for alternative forms of support that could lead to closing the financial deficit that the agency has reported for this year, as well as ensuring financing for the following years. However, there's never enough funds for the Palestinian causes. The Commissioner of the UMRA states, I humbly request all of you to ensure that promises made are then transferred. We should also think about the possibility of new donations at this critical time, support their endeavor in order to mobilize other members and states of the General Assembly for them to also contribute with additional funding. And I would also have another request. Support should be shown in 2018 for this cause to be taken the next year. This would be extremely important. This is the meeting of ministers of the Arab League in full development. This is the outside of the UMRA. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs stated on Tuesday that the decision of President Donald Trump of suspending funds for Palestinians as just another crime. Abbas sinks in an important river of India. This is just in. At least 55 people are killed. How often we see these disasters in India? People trying to rescue survivors from the buses. There are some corpses as well. And here, Narendra Modi stated, the event with the bus in Telangana is going beyond words. There's anguish due to the loss of lives, as well as solidarity with the 94 people on board of the bus who died, at least half of them. Mistreated families praying for the recovery of moral and emotional wounds, which is not easy. An overcrowded bus fell into a gorge in India, killing 55 people. Zimbabwe declares emergency due to cholera in Harare after the number of deaths added to 20. See how filthy it is. This all leads to an epidemic of cholera, a disease that was eradicated in other places. There's trash around the road. The local level, well, everyone throws garbage, including used diapers, and the result is that we've lost all children due to cholera. We don't even know how to manage this. As people, we do not know how to keep our environment clean. Why is there dirty water everywhere? They can't even give us containers, so how do they expect us to live with health? And then a resident, Jembio Sherry Muchambaya, stated, we are done of having all these dumps here. There is not a single reason for throwing trash like this. The council doesn't answer, and the parliament has barely visited this place. They should solve the situation that we are dealing with. See how's the life in the third world. Residents walking, water everywhere, children walking home and jumping over sewers that stink, water as well. Glenview, Shona, this is the zone. I don't know what's nice about this view. We look after the children. They go to school and preschool. We know where this disease comes from, and it continues spreading. Tendai Chitsona, a resident, stated, "We are facing water scarcity, and people, however, are dying of cholera. The municipality is closing water supply. It's unbelievable. However, there are water lines that are being flooded, and we've seen this, and we've seen what happens. Cholera is killing people as I speak. I know lately died in this neighborhood, and there's of course a risk for it spreading around." So Zimbabwe has denounced and declared a spread of cholera in Harare, the capital, on Tuesday after 20 people died due to cholera. They had to wait for 20 to die to declare the emergency. Obadiah Mojo, minister, stated that over 2,000 people have been infected due to drinking polluted water. So they speak to heaven right now. The prince leader of Korea, the main leader, meets once again with the legislator of China and has welcoming activities. An important contact. Lee Shan-soo shaking hands with Kim Jong-un, grandson of Kim Jong-un, in the meeting room where we are right now. Applause for the attendees. The wife of Kim Ri-so-yu attending the meeting, attendees welcoming. Kim watching the artistic performance to honor the guests. And this with a protocol that has widened relationships. It is very, very important for North Korea in this case. Kim at the reception, Kim Jong-hoi, president of the Communist Party of North Korea, and welcoming words at the reception. Ri-sol-ju attending the show. So it was an artistic, beautiful event in order to honor the guests.
演出最后以朝中有意万古长青乐曲结尾，现场响起。
The leader of Korea, Kim Jong-un, met with Lee Shan-soo with a specific artistic performance and a great reception for Lee and the Chinese delegation led by himself. This is a very important party when the Democratic Republic of Korea celebrates their 70th anniversary with the special envoy of President Xi Jinping that shows the amnesty between both countries. The diada, this is very important for Catalonia, where separatists demand independence. This is the crowd that we see every year on this day in the main boulevard of downtown Barcelona, waving their flags for the independence, as well as the esteladas, which is the independent flag for Catalonia. Giants walking and dancing in the street, also flags for independence. This is an old tradition. A crowd and a picture of the former President Charles Puigdemont by reading lampposts in Catalonian. People at the balconies and flags for independence hanging from the balconies, and that are carried on the bodies as well.
Los gritos de libertad.
Shouts for freedom, Puigdemont in any sign and in every place. Reading, let's make the Catalan Republic. People showed their signs of support for the Catalan politicians that have been jailed. Flags for independence, the Estelada due to the Lone Star, and Matthew Savarese for the independence of Catalonia, resident in Canada. This is in French and in Catalan as well. Provided his statement in the celebration that shows the patriotic sense of the people from Catalonia. In English and French as well, with the messages for independence. There's, of course, a great evidence that the majority of Catalonians are there for this cause. A very deep message sent to Madrid. The flag with the star. The demands go beyond this. They demand the freedom of certain prisoners. This person who lives in Canada stated, "We want to vote." This is very similar to other people that are oppressed around the world. That's why Catalonia is a pacifier movement, and we need to get rid of their beliefs, the political beliefs. This is a shame to see in Europe in 2018. This needs to change. Isabel, 49, manager, stated, demanding the freedom of our prisoners and exiled for us to live in peace in a democratic country where we can decide what to do and what we want to do. And this gentleman, a sovereign engineer, stated, "We're here to demand the liberation of the political prisoners of jails in order to carry out the mandate of October 1st. That's why we voted for the implementation of the Catalan Republic." The party represented in the flags for independence, Estelada, also wearing mask of the former President Puigdemont, show the will of all Catalonians to be independent from Spain. El Segadors. This is the anthem for independence there. This is in downtown Barcelona with signs stating "You're not alone." Amnesty. Manifestors walking and singing for the liberation of Catalonian leaders in jail. The Diada is the day for independence that they haven't yet achieved, but the crisis can be felt. What is the Diada? The Diada is celebrated the 11th of September each year, which commemorates the fall of Barcelona to the Bourbon army during the succession wars. Catalonian troops for Charles III were defeated by Philip V. This meant the abolishment of Catalonian institutions. That's why today we remember the bravery of those who fought to defend Barcelona in 1714. They vindicate the right of Catalonians as well as the freedom of the community, and this can be felt with the presence of the flags as well as the star. This is called Estelada. This came from Vanguardia for the information of our source. So the United States and Russia take the word in its lead. This is the United Nations and several security councils commemorating September 11. This is the Security Council of the United Nations.
Taking Russia and Iran.
So, the United States, while the delegates listen, have taken Russia and Iran under their word, and they want to protect Idlib from more violence. They don't care the type of weapons or methods, but the United States oppose any type of upscaling of violence in Idlib. All the members of the Security Council should feel the same. It's time for Russia to stop wasting their time when speaking about Syria.
As constructive actors in Syria.
Russia and Iran have had all the opportunities to show their credibility as constructive, as actors in Syria. But what have they done with these opportunities? They have created so-called separation zones of Syria that have violated systematically the ambassador of Russia for the United Nations in the Security Council meeting, and the ambassador stated, everything said today, everything we hear in Idlib is not only due to concern of the citizens there, but we're also concerned just like you are. But this cannot be explained due to an attempt. It is somehow possible to have a terrorist enclave in Syria and thus impede the establishment of Syrian government over their own land, and we appeal to you. We urge you to restart these attempts and for them to become a positive part of the political process. The ambassador of Iran for the United Nations, Gaman Ali Geshaviro, stated,
"The right to determine the future of Syria belongs."
The right to determine the future of Syria belongs specifically to the Syrians. That's why cooperation, in order to establish and start with the Constitutional Committee, is fundamental. In parallel to these efforts, there should be the proper conditions for the safe and voluntary return of all refugees and people displaced internally.
And internally displaced persons.
So, the ambassador of the United States, Nick Haley, stated that it's time for Russia to stop wasting the time about peace in Syria. So it's a very important hit. The Minister of Defense of Russia stated, in Idlib, a chemical attack has already started. This came from the portal Russia Today of RT. So different channels of the Middle East United States have reached the Syrian city of Izrazur in order to record a chemical attack, according to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian country. Inhabitants of Idlib have reported that in Jisr al-Shura there's been a chemical attack carried out by the Damascus troop allegedly against the civilians. This morning, the city that we spoke has been visited by different channels of the Middle East and also the United States, according to the Russian Center for the Parties. The script includes support from activists of the civil defense, the White Helmets, after an alleged use of barrel bombs with dangerous substances from the Syrian army. It looks like a scandal. In order to confirm the truth of this and the quick take of ground by the White Helmets, the terrorists have taken Jisr al-Sur from the Kirvar city, 2 containers with venomous substance made mainly of chlorine. The center has stated that before the day is over, all the materials of this montage should be given to the channels in order to issue them after they're published on the social networks. Speaking about the substances that are being used for this scene, the international that is called teleSUR has stated that this is not a normalized chemical substance, particularly from the international community, but they are chemical elements that are easy to manipulate as well as to transport and get. How these substances have been introduced in Syria, he stated that they have been introduced in the same way that drugs are brought, just as weapons. There is a collaboration of terrorist states to do so. There are trafficking networks in the jihadist territories that provide everything needed. According to the analyst, during the last weeks, Moscow has warned a false chemical attack that was taking place in Idlib that would provide a justification to attack Syria. So they gave us dates and crackers. This is information that even includes children. It's an information war. 2 Americans have attacked teleSUR with bombs, explosive bombs, a chemical agent that is forbidden by international communities, according to the Russian Center for Conciliation of Parties in Syria. RT also stated Abdurrahman Sajjara uses or wears an improvised anti-gas mask in Syria. The orders will come from abroad. Russia speaks about the provocation that will take place in Syria. The Ministry of Defense of Russia. Today is the 45th anniversary of the assassination of Salvador Allende, who governed Chile since 1970 to 1973, and also 45th anniversary of the military coup of 1973 that killed him and that ended his government that was democratically chosen. I also remember the famous singer Victor Jara. I interviewed him before going there. I told him, don't go there, you know what's going to happen. Well, and it happened to him. In the Morandé, in Palacio de la Moneda, his body was taken out after the bombings of his own armed force. Bombing the house for notes. Then Letelier was also killed, as well as his American assistant, Ronnie Moffitt, 26-year-old, as part of the scope of the Condor operation, with the direct participation of Cuban terrorists Guillermo Sampol, José Dionisio Suárez de Esquivel, Virgilio Paz Romero, and Alvin Rose, all of them from the fascist MNC, the CIA, and the FBI. And this happened in the States. Recordings in the States show that Richard Nixon, while speaking about the president of Chile, Salvador Allende, spoke about him as a son of a bitch, whose ass needed to be kicked. This is a quote. This is a tape of Nixon and Kissinger. This is not personal. I defend the people of Chile in order to make the transformations, in order to face a local and better situation for prosperity. I think that this is a clear position. I admire this. I am sure that this will be part for the people, because leaders are willing to die. The people are willing to die. They're willing to do anything that's needed. On September 11, 1973, the palace in the heart of Santiago de Chile was woken by a fire. Around 11 a.m., tanks and planes of the armed forces under the orders of Augusto Pinochet Ugarte, general, opened fire against the presidential building. The army threw gas and bombs and striking against the president Salvador Allende. Minutes before, at 10:15 a.m., Allende issued his last message to the Chilean people on Radio Magallanes. This is the last chance. The air forces have bombed the towers of Radio Postales and Radio Corporación. I am not bitter, but disappointed, being betrayed. Soldiers of Chile, commanders, admirals, together with Mr. Mendoza, crawling general that just yesterday spoke about the loyalty to the government. Based on these facts, I have to say, I will not quit, I will not resign. This is a historical moment, and I thank the loyalty of the people. And I am certain that the seed that we are planting in the consciousness of thousands and thousands of Chileans will never be shut. They have the strength. They could hit us, but social processes will not stop. Not with crime, not with force. History is ours, and it's created by the peoples. The people shall continue. The people should not surrender. Moments later, General Palacios went to the Independence Room of the palace. The body of Salvador Allende was laying. Palacios spoke with the radio officer and provided his report. Mission accomplished, he said. Palace taken over, President death. The fire, the death and the support of the government of the states under the presidency of Richard Nixon created a neoliberal economic model and transformed the coup into the most violent one in the history of Latin America of the 20th century. During the first 6 months in power, the dictatorship and command of Augusto Pinochet killed around 10,000 people, and in a year, apprehended 90,000 people, taking a systematic violation of human rights until 1990. Workers of my nation, I am faithful. You will overcome this. As men, this is a bitter moment about the treason. Continue, however, that sooner rather than later, the squares will be open, where the free men will walk. Long live Chile, long live the people, long live the workers. Once again, the States impede Hernando Calvo Espina Ryder to get on a plane to Cuba. This is the portal of Rebellion, Saturday, September 8, 2018. Once again, I wasn't allowed to board the plane that was going to take me to Havana. This happened in Orly, the airport of Paris. My visa, which was obtained in the consulate of Cuba, as well as my passport fully valid. Since Friday, I suspected problems. One Corsair Airlines did not allow me to check in online. Yesterday in the morning, I went to the airport and I was unable to check into the plane. This is the statement from Paris of Friar Hernando Calvo Espina, recorded by Cristóbal Nilo Campos. This is just another way to see how the long-scale persecution is taking place. This is undoubtedly a very abusive situation. Well, I should be arriving in 2 hours to Havana, capital of Cuba. However, I am still here in Paris. The reason due to which I'm not in Cuba but here is because this morning the Orly airport when I went to check in order to travel with Corsair Airlines, a French company. I was denied for the third time my right to board the plane and freely go to Cuba because I was forbidden by a country which isn't either France or Cuba. Since yesterday, I started being concerned to think about the city I was going to be arrived because I was checking in online, but I received a message that stated that the passenger cannot check in and the check-in should take place in the airport. So I went to Orly 4 hours before my flight. It was still empty by the time I arrived. And when I scanned my passport, the person at the counter saw that the check-in wasn't allowed, and this lady told me the problem could be that you only have one of your last names set and you have two last names on your passport, or either you're lacking a visa. I showed her my visa, which was bought yesterday in the Cuban consulate. However, regardless of this, she was unable to check me in. So she spoke to her manager, a lady as well, that wasn't only controlling or organizing all flights to Cuba, but also to other countries of the Caribbean. It took her a while. The lady came back. I asked her what was happening, and she said they're making a call. They're going to see what's happening because it could be a problem with Cuba. She went back, and when she came back, I asked her what was happening, and she said, yes, they're speaking to Cuba because apparently the authorities don't allow you to go to Cuba. And I said, why not? I was yesterday at the Cuban consulate, but she didn't realize that I was listening to her. And she told her colleague, he's speaking with Cuba in English. However, he or she is calling their states. Then I realized that it was something different that was happening. Then the person in charge came back and told me, sir, you cannot travel because there's an order of the Cuban government. You cannot go to the country. I said, it's impossible. I was in Cuba a month ago, and yesterday I got my visa directly in the Cuban consulate. And this is not going to happen in a 24-hour term. I'm going to Cuba to finish the documentary, and everyone is waiting me, the people and institutions that I'm working for. She told me that she had nothing else to say, and then I asked her, who should I speak to in Cuba in order to call them? She said, okay, you can call them. And this lady gave me a phone number that she called, and the person that answered, and she told me in English about this, so I wrote all this down, and she told me, if you want, call. And I said, you cannot call this number, this American number. And she said, okay, if you want, you go and ask the Corsair agency to see what they can do. Well, because at least need to get my money back or take a different flight. And then I went there, and the only solution was given was telling, okay, this is a different flight for a fortnight away. But if you're not going to allow me to board today, in 15 days you're not going to allow me. And they also told me you have to pay 100 euro for the change of flight. And I said I'm not going to do so, and I want you to tell me who you spoke with because you weren't speaking to Cuba. She said I was going to call, and the manager stated that the Cubans wasn't allowing me, the government of Cuba wasn't allowing me to go there. And I said, you're lying because I called the embassy.